Hello Internet. Today we're going to build a small web app. Which web app? The one that will solve my pains of actually trying to make use of Lambda Labs, which offer awesome machines, but they are quite unavailable and you need to poll their API in order to know which machines are available at what point. So this is a really sad spot where no machine is available, and I'd just like to have like a small website that runs in the background and sometimes notifies me when there's something going on here. We might do that as a front end today, and we might add a notification maybe in another video. So let's dive into making this. We are going to use Vite with React because we just need something simple, and cd into Lambda Polo. We'll initialize our small Git repository, open WebStorm, and dive into some coding. This might be useful. Let's just add, I'm pretty sure that adding more things to the ignore file from the get-go will be useful. And after this is done, we can say git add everything, git commit scaffold. And I like Yarn as a package manager, but this seems to begin to be not quite the package manager I like, because I seem to have a little bit more trouble with installing stuff with it sometimes. So I might get used to not using Yarn. Maybe I'll switch to Bun as a package manager, maybe at some point. Anyhow, we are now installing everything, and we can probably run yarn dev in a minute. And we have our own small React server. And actually, let's minimize this one. We don't need that anymore, not for now at least. And we have our front end here. And let's go over to this area. Actually, let's switch these. Okay. And in our app, we can delete everything because we don't need almost nothing here. We don't need the count. We don't need the Vite logo. We might use state in a minute. What we would want is something in this form of local storage. So I don't want to manage that hook myself. Use local storage. I don't remember which libraries provide that. I think, yeah, TS hook is nice, if I recall correctly. Yeah, okay, so use hook TS, or maybe just, I somehow remember there's another library that does that. But never mind, we'll just use this one. So we are doing this all client-side because I don't want to have a server in order for this to run. I just want to yarn add use hooks. Awesome. And let's just have now const API key, set API key to use local storage. Awesome. And do we want to use a form for that, or do we want to like have this? Let's just do this manually. So input type password. We don't want to show it to anyone that's watching. And value is, well, on change. Yeah, that's a string. So it might be string or undefined. And how are we looking here? Now we can just type things into this one. And if we now refresh the page, it stays. Awesome. So we have our API key. Use TS hooks. Nah, that's not what we'd want. So yeah, we can have a label API key. And we'll worry about styling in a minute. What's going on here? It says it needs string. Does it need anything else? Set value, initial, key. Oh, key is important. Yeah. So Lambda API key. Seems legit. Awesome. And let's now have our API. I think we'll use React query because it's nice to make a recurring API call with that within React. So let's just add yarn React query. Is that the way to actually install that today, or is it handstack query these days? Get started. Handstack query 5, or we'd like the latest version, which is probably installation and handstack query. Yeah. Amazing. Workspaces can only be enabled in private projects. Who asked you about workspaces? If we now import, let's just use query. So const query equals use query from React query. Yeah. And do I need to have a context provider for this? I don't recall. Okay, so that's the installation. Let's do the quick start because we do need the query client provider. So in our app, do we have like a main TS thing? Yeah, let's just inject that here with not much thought about the implications of that. Import from here, and let's close that tag, reformat everything, and our query client is just here on the top. And we can now use our query client. Do we need to actually? We don't have to use that because we're just using a query without like nothing fancy. So use query. And what's the API for that? Do we need to like give it a URL? Probably. Query client. Let's walk over the config. So cache queries, query cache, probably not. Okay, so nothing interesting in this config. Query key, query function, get to dos. Oh, I see. And get to dos is from my API. Awesome. So let's just fetch stuff from this function. Actually, we can, if it's just the function, we can just define it directly here. So our thingy here is query function, which is an async function that does, well, we do need to await, we need to fetch, and we need API Lambda Labs. Yeah, not Lambda School. But good on you for trying that. Let's just walk over to Lambda's docs. So docs, Lambda Labs API. Lambda Labs docs. Awesome. Instance types, that's the one I want. So our const URL will be just this. We will need to think about that so much. So we have our fetch URL and what seems to be broken here? Okay, so it's not happy about the fact that I'm using empty options. Is that the thing? So query, if we go for query function and we say something like that, let's see if this is actually correct. Response JSON. No overrides match this call. So we need probably more than that. We need a query key. Is that right? What else do we need? Query key. Yeah, so let's call that instance types. Oh, API key. That's quite nice. I might want to have that as an encrypted thing and not share the API key directly there, but I don't know. Let's just go with the flow. So we have a key. We can actually derive that key here. So we know query key is just this thing. We just can have that in the same place. And what do we do with this query? First of all, we can define its shape. So type, instance type. How does that look? So I've curled this thing before, so we can try to do that now. So let's actually do that. Let's create our own a new API key just for the video. So key for the video stream, delete me later. Key for stream. Names must be alphanumeric or spaces. Ah, oh, come on. Delete me. Okay, so seems like we can just copy this thing and paste it directly into our shell. And yeah, we have our secret. Oh, that's just copying the secret. So this is what I want. I wanted this one. So awesome. So these are my instances. If I want instance types, I think this is the one. Cool. So, and just to, let's pipe that through JQ so you will see the shape of this thing. So what we have here is just an object which contains the data property. We can just maybe, let's just quickly go through that. Move my face maybe around here. That won't be a little bit less annoying. Yeah, so we're piping our things through JQ. And that means that we can, actually, let's zoom in back again. So we are querying the data property, and what we have here is the type of GPU, and then we have our object, which is the has the instance type, and the list of regions where it's available, and like the actual specs of the machine. So we can have maybe our running polo that basically has a small square for each instance type, and it will be green if it has more than one available zone, and red if not. Let's get to it then. So how does the shape look? We have, let's describe the instance itself. So the instance itself has one property. No, it's okay. So it has two properties. It has the instance type property and the regions available with capacity. And we can actually download these through the Open API thing, but I don't think we need to because we can just quickly define that ourselves. So instance types response. So this is going to be the key data, which points to some key string, and that key is the same key inside. So let's go with Now we have instance type, which points to the same key. Is that a thing? I think so. Maybe it's just, oh, sorry, it's name pointing to key. How can I access this key now? I can probably derive that somehow, but let's just go with string because we don't care. Let's try not to like bend our backs over cents per hour number. We have a description, which is string. We have our specs, which we don't care so much about. vCPUs. Almost. I can understand why Copilot tried to guess that. So we have memory gigabytes, also a number, and we have storage gives, also a number. And we also have regions with available capacity, with capacity available, which is, I actually don't know if that what is in this array, but let's just say we don't care. At this point, we just want the count. So our use query should return this kind of response. And that response, well, let's just pretend this works. Is this under the data thing? Yeah, it is. Awesome. And we can now have our query, I think. Let's just, first of all, input that just directly here. So first of all, if it's loading, then loading. If it's error, then error. Is that not a thing? Error is not assignable to, yeah, well, you know what is. A string is always assignable to whatever this is. Success, JSON stringified. Yeah, sure. And we can now paste our delightful API key directly into this one. And refresh. Let's look at the actual thingy, and it says course. Of course it says course. Why would it not? Response pre-flight. So first of all, how would we make this work? I really hate the fact that it bothers us now with course. It responsible to pre-flight. Set the requests mode to no course to fetch the request with course disabled. So, course, no course. And let's refresh that. It says error failed. Source network course error. Why does everything need to be like with course error? So you can see the token. Let's see what we have in the request headers other than that. Instance types, so options. So it says accept everything, HTTPS. Fetch mode course. That's so annoying. Disable cache. Let's refresh that. How do we pretend this is not a course? React. It's not React query, yeah, but let's just see if there's like a way to bypass that. Yeah, it's definitely not a React thing. I just want to make sure if there's like a hack that might make this work. Read how course works here. Course settings, no Ajax, different domain, proxy. I really don't want to actually forward this request. Fetch endpoint function, then response JSON. I wanted this to be like a nice web app. Why make everything hard? Of course, if we push this to a service worker, we have service worker. Does this make it better or worse? Handle request. If is cross origin. Wait, fetch request. Doesn't seem to be helpful. Event respond with handle request. The value of access control allow origin header in the response must not be a wildcard when the request credentials is include. Let's meditate on that for a minute. If that won't be helpful, then we might pivot to just using a small terminal app that just does the thing, runs the curl for us, and just does it nice, in a nice way. So if we go back to this thing and we actually, let's zoom this in so you'll see a little bit more what's actually happening. So we have our request, it's blocked by course, which is kind of sad. And it says access control, request headers, authorization course. Cache control, no cache, origin. Pragma, no cache, refer. Fetch mode, course. So do we need to maybe set that not here? Refer policy, no refer. First of all. And so cache, no cache. That's just irrelevant, but we just need to have that. And mode. So is it course or no course? Let's try that. Let's see what do we get. Yeah, so course error. Let's try no course. And that is 401, unauthorized. And it says unauthorized. Why is that? Because we're not sending the header suddenly. So credentials, not omit, we need something better, which is include. And why do we not get these credentials sent now? Because it says no course and it is a course request. What else do we have here? Navigate, same origin. It's not same origin. It's definitely cross-origin resource sharing. Fail to fetch. It is true that that's the failure we have here. Okay, so let's ignore all of that and let's play with terminal apps, I guess, because apparently we can't have nice things and have this as a web app pulling another services API. This is what happened in the world. The response headers, by the way, say vary cookie server Cloudflare xframe origin frame option same origin. Refer policy, same origin. Okay, so apparently we are definitely not allowed to do this. Sad face. Okay. Let's pivot. Let's scrap this thing and let's write our own small terminal app. Do we want to make it fancy? Maybe let's make it fancy. I know that there's like a React for the terminal, which is like for TUI. UI React like paradigm. I don't want Rust, I want something simple. React for terminal. Terminc. I think that's the one I saw, which is basically, or is it Termwind that does like the styling? But let's see how that looks. So it says import render text inc example, and we can do that. You know what? Let's just have that as a what? Do we want to just have a small server for this? Maybe let's have a small server that just does the actual forwarding for us. Do we want to do that? No, because then nobody else would use it other than me, because you would not want to send your Lambda API key to my server, ever. Well, that's disappointing. Yeah, let's just write a janky script that just summarizes this for me. Or actually, you know what? Maybe I'll just learn how to run the proper JQ query that only shows me the actual the things that only shows me the object where this array is longer than 1. What do you say about that? So yeah, okay, that's the pivot, I think. Yeah. Sorry about that. If you were hoping to see some React development, that's not your day. If you were hoping to see me improvising, then, well, welcome and join the show. So let's learn JQ, because and up until this point, I only knew how to do basic queries with it. So let's go with the tutorial, and let's actually see what's going on here. So we curl something. Ooh, that's nice that they show us this information. And let's pipe that into JQ. This will obviously be the same because we're only using the identity operator. And what else do we have here? Commits. Then we only say that's array in the place of 1. Then we can pipe that into message.commit message name.commit name. Okay, so that's how we construct a new object out of the things that we have here. If we go with this, then this will give us the full range. And here we have, we take the array. Okay. So I think this is looking nice. Okay, let's try to improvise with this. So we are going to build a new pipeline. First of all, I see that what they do is, first of all, have that, and in our data object. First of all, maybe let's just simulate this with nothing fancy. So let's pipe that into data JSON, and we can now bat data JSON into JQ and not think about API calls for the rest of this video. So we have our API key, our API object, and we want to query the data filter by the data property here at the top. And we don't care about that because it's the only property. So we can just ignore that one and continue forward. And we can pipe that object into, we are going to want to take all properties of it, and we would like all properties where the object at that property dot this one how do we go with the length? Is that a thing? So cannot index object in with array. Yeah, so I'm not sure how do we actually set a thing with null. So this just gives me the flat object structure here, which is sort of okay. But what I'd like to do is only keep that object if something. If this is longer than 1, longer than 0, actually. So let's try to understand what has happened here. So we can go read the manual. Let's actually zoom that in. So we would like to construct. So this is an interesting thing. So we are building an array. Interesting. So that means we can go with something like this will give us an array, right? Yeah. So that flattens this to an array. We basically dropped the root key that we had in the previous example. If we go back to this one, then we had root keys. We don't care about them because these are already self-explanatory. They have their instance type right here. And now we can pipe that into nothing. Let's think about that. Actually, let's not wrap these in arrays yet because we don't want these arrays. Or do we? Yeah. So how do conditionals work? Conditionals and comparisons. Example. Input null, output false. Command equals to something. What is that? Input. Every property here dot that equals true, true, false. So something dot equals to empty array. True. Okay, so we have our condition. We now need to understand how do we actually use that to query something. So dot if else null, is that a thing? How do we do if then else end? Okay. So if this, then dot else, how do we signify the empty object? This end, just that. Compile errors. Do we need to not maybe wrap that in? If A, then B, else C. If A, then B. And let's just have null. So we'll see maybe. Yeah, and let's invert that because we just want null and A. So everything's null, which is what to be expected. And we can now, instead of that, we can take that nice pipeline and go back to our curl example and pipe that in. And we have an instance. Amazing. So that actually worked. So we know that there's a new A10 that's actually waiting for us to instances. Let's actually grab that one. And it's gone. Amazing. Yep, it's gone. I didn't catch it fast enough. But apparently, okay, so we have learned to do something. And now the only thing I'd want to do is maybe actually drop these nulls because I'd want, by the way, this is a nice thing to maybe add here now that we know how it looks. That's the shape of the thing. So it's name string, description string as well. Awesome. Okay, so that's actually quite nice that we have actually seen this this one happening, and it's available again apparently. California. Maybe did we catch the instance? Yeah. Okay, so we caught the instance. Nice. So this API thingy is already useful. So now we can just watch this with some interval, which is let's say 5 seconds. That's enough, and we can just let that run. And that should print now something, or will it? Invalid literal at common. Okay, interesting. Did we forget to do something like wrap these in quotes? Yeah. Yeah, so now this is basically now running and we don't need to think about it that much. We can just yank that terminal and put it to the side and just have that running. And if something will come up, then we will see that. Let's try to now maybe level up this thing and drop all these nulls. So we won't need to actually consider them because they're not interesting. So let's filter things with JQ now. So drop map values $, empty. So empty is a thing, empty. No result, not even null, none at all. That's the one I wanted. So instead of null, just empty. It's the true absence of values. And now we can also go with curl -s probably. Is that S is the silent thing? Yeah. Awesome. So now if we actually wrap that in brackets, in quotes, and just watch that, we have a super clean slate, and sometimes things will pop up. And I think this is quite a victory now that I've learned how to filter JQ and actually caught myself a Lambda Cloud instance that I can actually do something useful with. Maybe tomorrow, maybe today, we'll see. Yeah, so I hope you learned something like, first of all, course sucks. It's actually a thing. It's actually not interesting. Like it actually like hits people a lot of the time, and also happened to me now. So don't do frontend if you don't have to. Sometimes a terminal app is nice. Delete your secrets after the stream. And if you want to actually try to build this yourself, I can either post this nice result of this curl pipeline online, or you can try to copy it from here, which I think is quite informative. I think there's no like funky magic going on here. It's just flatten the data out and conditional on an empty regions. We just return empty, or we actually return the object because we'd like to do something with it. We could actually be even let's say more aggressive and inject the URL to go to book the instance, basically right here in the script. But I think this is going to be an exercise for the readers and not for me. Okay, I hope you learned something new. I certainly did, or at least I learned that using JQ is nice. And see you in the next video. Bye-bye.